The Civil Rights Movement.
The Women's Rights Movement.
The Gay Liberation Movement.
Anti-war movement.
The AIDS Movement for Life.
Trade Women's March.
Joss and Sandra lived through and participated in all of these moments in history that define who we are today. They dedicated their lives to making not only their future better, but the future of the next generation, whom Joss and Sandra believed deserved better than what they had received. Joss and Sandra helped change our world.
I am almost 70. I identify as a lesbian and have done so since 1970. Living in Big Sur. This is 50 years ago, I realized today. That blew me away. And I fell in love with a woman. And I realized that that's what was happening. She was straight, and I respected that. And we were never going to have a relationship, but nevertheless. And then this book got published, Lesbian Woman by Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon. And I bought a copy of it in Safeway. It took me a lot of courage, work it up to buying that. And I just realized that as much as passionately as I loved Big Sur, I had to leave. So I threw my stuff into my Toyota Land Cruiser Jeep, including my dog, my hound dog, and drove up to San Francisco and showed up at the door of Daughters of Bilitis. And I began to meet women, and my life just veered and took that lovely turn, and I've been very blessed. Non-traditional work on my own, house painting and carpentry and whatever came along before I entered a formal union apprenticeship in the sheet metal trade. And I did that for 15 years, and I worked both very large jobs, high rises, and smaller jobs, and I loved it. I absolutely loved being a construction worker. But my back finally gave out, and I became a dog walker.
I am a Southern bisexual person. However, I have been with my wife for 37 years. So I guess the bisexual part doesn't much matter anymore. And I don't know if you know any Southern women, but I'm very much like them. I was raised in a very fundamentalist church in the South, in Texas, which I consider part of the South. I was raised by people who were extremely racist and homophobic and classist and just a lot of things that I did not want to be. And I knew that I did not want to be those things. And it became the meaning of my entire life to unlearn the things that I learned there. And I came out into a group of radical lesbians in 1969 when Stonewall changed everything in our lives in just a day. We were so proud of ourselves and we felt so free. I came on a train from San Antonio, Texas on the night before Thanksgiving in 1980. As a cabinet maker, I was actually the first woman in Northern California to achieve a journey status. So there's apprentices and journey people, that's all there are. And I did that for 20 years. Part of that time I taught a class. So I went into nonprofit work, and I worked for the next 11 years as the manager of a culinary training program for homeless and previously homeless people. So then I retired after that, and now I'm a writer. We met. We were both involved in the skilled trades. I was a cabinet making apprentice, and Joss was about to become a sheet metal apprentice. And we were involved in a nonprofit that put out a quarterly magazine called Tradeswomen. One night we were in a meeting of the magazine to work out the layout and the stories and things like that. And Joss began to tell a story. And when she was a few sentences into this story, I fell in love with her. So you can imagine her telling this story and me just being gaga. I thought, I mean, not only was she adorable, but she was brave and brilliant and wonderful. And
I paid her to say that.
No, I was dating someone else at the time, and I said, let me end this relationship and I'll see you on Friday. And that was it. Some of the most influential people in our lives have been the people we met during volunteer work, especially during volunteer work in the AIDS program. And those who are still alive are still our friends. And they are some of the most wonderful people, and we would not have met them otherwise. Our best friend was a man that we met doing the food drives on Saturday, and I realized that this man was going to die, and I thought very carefully about becoming friends with him. And now it seems a little shallow, but then I thought, do I want to give my heart to somebody that I'm going to lose consciously? Intentionally. But I did, and he became our best friend. And he was one of the greatest influences in my life. He was what we call an old soul. If you've ever thought about reincarnation, an old soul is somebody who's been here before. He was wise and thoughtful and kind, and I adored him.
Either we're here to try to make things a little better, or what's the point? Kindness. I used to say I thought that kindness once was more important than intelligence. And Sandra instantly said, kindness is intelligence. Compromise and patience matter a whole lot. It's a huge thing.
I think when you're young, you think that compromise is just evil. And it's, I think, almost the pinnacle of human achievement.
Wake up where the clouds are far behind.
we decided on the commitment ceremony. Joss sat in a chair and I sat at her feet on the floor, and she said, if we're going to make this work, we have to only go forward. We can't go backwards and continue to bring up you did this to me, so I did this to you. All of which is valid and true and also irrelevant. And when I said, yes, you're right, we'll do this, I didn't believe that I would be able to do that, but I have, and Joss has.
Oh, well, we gave the blessing of family to my mother, and she didn't, at first she said, well, what do you want me to do? And what do you want me to do? And she just didn't quite get it. And finally I said, whatever you see family as a blessing, that's what you want to talk about. So she said, oh, okay, I can do that. And she spoke for 5 minutes, and you could hear a pin drop. And she told the story of Ruth. And some of the Jewish women who were there were just in tears because they could not imagine their mother giving a blessing like this at a wedding. It just would never have happened. But she was positively rabbinic, and she said, and these women were a family, she said. They were a family.
Then they linked arms with men in beards and dresses, and women in tight jeans and shaved heads. Then they bought lesbian novels and took them to their literature classes, and then they kissed in restaurants.